But we got to get into what the NFL season literally kicked off with on its first Sunday. And that was as we were all getting ready to sit down on our couch or get into work, whatever we were doing to cover those games on Sunday. We all saw the videos of Tyreek Hill being pulled over for careless driving, speeding on his way to Hard Rock Stadium, but then the aftermath of him being handcuffed. Well, the body cam footage came out, and what we saw here was Tyreek Hill being pulled over by the Miami-Dade police, him in his car, speaking to the police officer, then rolling his window back up. It's dark. It's tinted. I understand why you want the window down. The cop initially at the window just knocking on it and say, hey, put it down. We want to see you put it down. Then the second it was put down, told him to get out of his car. And that's where it literally went 0 to 100 of the cop on the right. Second the door goes ajar, roping his arm around Tyreek Hill's neck and just ripping him out of the vehicle. Like, you go careless driving, you're speeding, you should get pulled over. You're driving like 60 into 35. It doesn't result in this, especially them pinning him on the pavement, putting his knee in his back to handcuff him. When Tyreek Hill, don't put the window up, but Tyreek Hill wasn't being that big of a jerk or anything to justify this type of response from the cops.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, Tyreek definitely wasn't being as big of a jerk as this situation warranted. Like, here's my thing about it, George, is though, like, as a black man in America, there are a couple of things that you learn from birth, and they're taught to you by your parents. And it's when you're in a situation like this, because it's going to happen. You are going to get pulled over by the cops being a black man in America, whether you are speeding like Tyreek Hill or you're driving and following the rules of the road.
Yeah.
That's just going to happen. The things that you learn are, comply, be very calm, talk in a manner of, respect and all that other stuff, even if you are being disrespected, because it could be the difference between life and death. And that's the honest truth. You know what I'm saying? So Tyreek, I understand that he's a famous person. I've seen many of famous people get pulled over, videos. They have their windows tinted, limo tint, whatever, and they ask the officers, can they put it up because they don't want people to see them because they're famous. Sometimes they say yes. Sometimes they say no. But at the end of the day, whatever they decide in that moment, you need to listen to, because luckily for him, it was down the street from a game. His teammates were around, but it could have been a totally different situation, right? And so for Tyreek to act the way that he did was not the right thing at all. But for the police officers to react to his poor reaction in that manner is unacceptable. And I'm happy to see that these people are having repercussions for their actions. And it sucks that it has to be someone as famous as Tyreek Hill for the repercussions to happen so quickly. Yeah. But this is just the honest, we all got a view of what it's like to be black in America. And that's the honest truth.
Yeah, and it sucks that it took an incident like this for people to start talking about this stuff again. Obviously, there have been horrific incidents in the past few years that have made this a talking point. But now that it's an NFL player, all sorts of news outlets feel like, oh, now we can start talking about this again. And I mean, look, all three of us are people of color. I mean, we know the reality here that other people just don't know. And that reality is what Ountae was talking about and what Tyreek Hill was talking about. And I think him kind of being the quote-unquote better man when he went up to the podium after this game and said, hey, I want to use this to have reforms being made. I want change to be made. That's exactly the right way to go about it, with, in retrospect, with the benefit of hindsight for him in particular. He didn't go up there and flame anybody. He didn't go up there and really reinforce the already negative perception that other people have of him. I spent a lot of time on social media looking at the reactions, and a lot of it is pretty appalling. They're saying, Tyreek Hill was acting, in a way that justified the police response. And that's just absolutely untrue. And the last thing I'll say about this is that having body cams is great because you see what is actually happening. It just makes me think of, what aren't we seeing? What isn't being recorded on body cams? What hasn't been recorded on body cams in the past? And just how bad is this problem actually? Because this is a root problem. This isn't something that just started because people started filming it, as we all know, as us three probably know more than other people. So this is something that is a huge problem. And it sucks that it's taken someone with the name and stature of Tyreek Hill to take it back to the mainstream, because it should be something that needs to be talked about a whole lot more.
Yeah, these are conversations we've seen in the spotlight, like going back to 2020 and obviously going back before then. But like we saw all the good change that came out of 2020, but it was also for something so horrific to happen, like someone being murdered by the police because of how he was pinned on the ground, similar to the fashion we saw from Tyreek Hill. And we still see it happening today. And even the guys that were put on administrative leave, like one of those was a police officer with a 27-year tenure. So you wonder, it wasn't just Tyreek Hill was the first time something like that happened. Like those are habits. That's something they're done. And for officers, how they're trained is to de-escalate. And for people just saying, well, it's the way he reacted. Again, like Tay and I were talking about it as this stuff was unfolding on Sunday. And I said it. I said it to him of like, I was 0% shocked to see this happen. Or like for Tyreek Hill to be put in this situation of a guy of, I could see him speeding and I could see him doing put the tints up. But the second that tint goes down, you don't just rip someone out of their car like that and throw them down to the ground. And also even further on what the body cam footage showed of, he's handcuffed, he's standing up, he's clearly calm. There's one officer with his hands on him just to keep him there in his spot. Another officer comes from down from behind and rips him down. And then that goes into what happened to his teammate Khalin Campbell as well, who him and John O. Smith pulled over to check on Tyreek Hill. So it's clearly a spot where a lot of players come in. You see the video, if you're watching this on YouTube or Twitch, of Khalin Campbell walking up to the officers, being told to go back. And before you see this, his hands were up, walking away. They come from the other side of the car, and all of a sudden he's getting handcuffed. The guy's walking away. He is de-escalating himself. And then you put him in handcuffs. What do you think that's going to do? Irk him, piss him off, but also, again, it's just like not de-escalation happening. And Colin, I know you pointed out, but I'm fully aware of like, yes, I'm Arabic, but I'm white passing. I've been pulled over by police, and I know because of the areas that they pulled me over, me making a left on a red or a green where I wasn't allowed to, they pulled me over. They go, this guy, he's just a white guy just driving through, made the wrong turn, go on ahead. Or I've been handcuffed in the past, and then within a minute, they were taken off because, again, they saw I was being calm. But I know my experiences with the police are very different, especially for someone like Ountae. Like, this is the reality. And people are pissed off to get the reminder, but, like, this is America. Like, this is what it's like to be black in America and dealing with the police. Black people are treated differently than someone that looks like me. People are just pissed off to get that reminder, but they're just naive and they want to be ignorant to the fact of that this happens, you know? Because there are good officers out there. There are officers that de-escalate situations. This one was handled very poorly. Could Tyreek Hill have kept the window down? Yes. Could the officers, did they need to rip him out of the car? Absolutely not, because you saw the whole time he was calm too. That's why, like, Tay, when we look at what happened and why I was happy, at least I was like talking with you through it on Sunday of just like, I know we talk about this stuff, and for me, it's my experience will always be different of what your experience is or what our coworker or co-host Travis' experience is like, same thing of dealing with the police.
Yeah, 100%. And you see videos online all the time of police officers pulling over a car or whatever, and then somebody who they knew was near, and they stopped 100, 200 feet down the road and, you know, just kept calm and made sure that the person that they were with were okay, right? They might have got out the car, and maybe the police officer does tell them to step back in the car, right? But if they don't, you know, they're respectful. They usually call for backup, so that they're more comfortable about not being outnumbered, right? In this situation, the police were completely outnumbering the Miami Dolphins in this situation. They had all the power, all the control, and they made it a point to take even more power. And, you know, the thing about it is just like, I understand that in both situations, both parties have big egos, right? NFL players, police officers, they all think what they do is very important to the world, right? And it is, right? We all need entertainment and we all need protection in that type of sense, right? But my thing is like the police officer's job is to protect and serve the community, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're doing this and you're clearly causing an uproar by your actions and everybody is upset and just asking questions, it's simple. Like, hey, what's going on here? Why is this happening? And your first thought is, oh, wow, these guys are big and intimidating and I need to make sure that they know I'm the dominant figure in this situation. That's where you completely cross the line. And that's where I get upset to see these videos, because these guys were calm. Like you said, Tyreek standing there, already handcuffed, already been taken down to the ground. Mm-hmm. Now he's standing back up with his hands behind his back in cuffs, being held by a police officer said something. I don't know what he said, but it wasn't aggressive at all in any nature, and gets slammed down to the ground because he didn't like what Tyreek had to say. That's insane. You know what I'm saying? When he's already, I mean, the NFL knows, right? Defenseless receiver, right? You got to, if somebody can't protect themselves, you don't want to put them in an even worse position. Why don't, if the NFL can understand that, right? For somebody who's not able to defend themselves and in a weak position already is being out there, and the police officers don't understand that, hey, like, let me not destroy this person and put them down and all this other stuff. Like, the mental gymnastics that you put a man through.
Yeah.
When you have them in that position, slamming them to the ground twice while they're in handcuffs so that you can feel more powerful. And now when Tyreek goes out of his house, because he's human, he might be an NFL player, but he's human. Now every time he gets in his car, now every time he drives past that street, he has to think about these moments, and he's going to feel a little fear. It might not be much, but he's going to be nervous about that situation every single time he gets in his car for the next couple of weeks, and who knows, maybe for the rest of his life. So it's important that these police officers get help, get more training. Hopefully these guys never step back on in the field, and we need to have better reform for these police officers because they need to learn from this situation.
And it's like you said, Tay, of like how close it was. And Tyreek Hill said himself, he's like, what if I wasn't Tyreek Hill? Like, these situations can be life or death because they probably got to the point they recognized it was Tyreek Hill. And to your point too, again, of like the de-escalation, like he's standing there. He's handcuffed. Calais Campbell, Jonnu Smith are checking on him. Calais Campbell's walking away. Jonnu Smith was stepping backwards while on the phone, just looking after his teammate, and they continue to go to them and go to them and go to them. There has to be a de-escalation process, and that's why when people call for police reform and for how they're trained and for how they handle situations like this, because you shouldn't treat someone differently or view them as a threat just because of the color of their skin, or you feel like you can get away with certain things because of the color of their skin. Again, that doesn't justify how to treat anybody, but that is a reality of what it is, and that's what we saw on Sunday. And it sucks where it's like, we work in sports because we love sports, because it's fun, and we see things like this happen, and this is like the setback of reality of like just the reminder of like, A, how lucky we have it, but also of like, as much fun as we want to have it, we want to talk about sports, like this is a serious things. And for the human beings that aren't as lucky or gifted as someone like Tyreek Hill or any NFL player, when they're put in these situations, the ending is far different. And where it's just something where it can end where they don't have the benefit of A, the body cam being there, but B, of the public being behind their back because of who they are and them having the platform to put this wrongful treatment out there as well.
And this is why in sports, having that platform is so important, and actually doing something with it is so important. I always think back to what Fox News host Laura Ingraham said once, which was shut up and dribble to an athlete that was trying to be an activist and trying to make things known. I think it was in the NBA. And it's like when something like this happens and you see the intersection between the two parties, that being sports and activism or sports and politics, whatever you want to say, you realize how just unbelievably stupid the mindset of shut up and dribble actually is. And I think about this situation, Tyreek Hill said that he feared for his life. He said this was a traumatic experience, and you can understand why. This whole situation is action and reaction. Tyreek Hill rolling up his window, like Tay said, maybe not the best thing, definitely not the best thing you should do. It does not warrant being tossed out of the car, getting pinned down to the ground with a knee on the small of your back. It's just not. And that's why, we live in this bubble of sports journalism, obviously. But when that bubble gets punctured, like it was on Sunday, you see the actual reality of what every single person goes through, especially people of color. So yeah, I mean, athletes being activists is not a bad thing. I think Tyreek Hill embracing that, and hopefully we see some change down the line, especially in Miami-Dade, but hopefully, wide scale and holistic. Then we're going to see why someone like Tyreek Hill utilizing his platform is so important for